Okay, so next presentation, we're moving on into financial planning. So Kerry is part of the Evoke Management team. She's an experienced finance and commercial director. She's also had the role of managing director in a couple of SME companies as well. So she's had full experience of what good looks like in terms of decent financial planning, and is going to share today her kind of take on what makes good financial planning process, and some things here that we can all take away and apply for our own situations. So Kerry, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and then you can share yours when you're ready.
Thanks. Okay. Hello everybody, hopefully you can see this. There we go. And so today I'm going to take you on a short financial planning expedition, slightly different hopefully, so bear with me. It'll be 10 minutes of and in we go. So why aren't there any numbers in this deck is my intro, but I'm sure that's fairly welcome news to some, but we're not going to answer that at this stage. First, I thought we'd go on a short trip. If we're going to hit the top of the mountain, we're going to need some points of reference. Our first point of reference is always, where are we now? If you don't know where you are now, it's going to make it very, very difficult to get to where you want to be. More luck than judgment, I believe. So putting a stake in the ground means gathering in business terms how you're performing today. You need to know what good looks like, as Rob said. And the way you can do that is to source the data in your business that tells you what's good. And often in your business, you need to know how a comparative works. So what's good for you? How do you know that's good in the market? So it's not just internal data. How do you start gathering this data? One of the ways to think about a business when I go into a business is I like to think of it as a series of gears, and each segment of the business interlinks. Every business is unique, so the gears in your business are going to be unique, and they're all going to have different weightings and dependencies. So the first thing you can do is really start to identify the gears that power your business. I've put some examples here, but obviously every business will be different. But the key thing is to think about how those each of those gears is weighted and how they interact. So, for example, marketing into product, product into margin. These are the gears that really drive the financial results in your business. So you've got your gears, it's time to log your starting coordinates. Where are you now? Now, hopefully you do have the starting coordinates around the management accounts. Hopefully you have some financial support, your P&L, your cash flow and your balance sheet. That's your accounting base. But each one of those gears has its own data set, and these are going to be really key because they help to define your starting KPIs. The way the gears interact then helps you define your key ratios. So we've talked today about customer acquisition. One of the key ratios that most people look at is the value of the cost of the customer acquisition versus the value of turnover generated. That's one way you can look at these gears. And the more you look at how they interact, the better you get at defining the ratios that are driving your business. So financial planning begins with identifying patterns, looking for anomalies, looking for gaps in the data, and always identifying trends. So what if I just keep walking straight ahead? Absolutely, you'll follow the path you followed for the last few years, and you might get to your goals, but you'll probably be less prepared for the inevitable changes. The walking straight ahead is your baseline plan. That's that if nothing changes, what's going to happen for the next few years, and you need to build this. This is where the start point and the where are you now. So fundamentally, your baseline plan is what happens if I do nothing and just keep doing what I've always done. Second point of reference is where do you want to go? So this is about setting your business goals, and they're going to be unique to your business. But for example, I've set turnover, growth, they might be non-financial, customer satisfaction, profitability. You might be looking to exit the business in a certain period, but you need to determine where you're trying to get to. I'd always say balance optimism with some pragmatism when setting those goals. Now you know where you want to be, you have to define the route to the summit. So really important to engage your team. Your team have insights that you don't necessarily have in certain aspects and some of those gears, and you're using patterns in the data to identify opportunities and new routes. So these could be marginal, they could be speed, efficiency and innovation, but they could be big projects like entering new markets or going into merging acquisition. But you probably already also have some tools in your backpack that are going to help you on the way. So are you a cash positive business? Are you, selling a unique product? How strong is your sales team? When you look at what you've got already, this is the key to often innovating and building on your existing base. You can also start considering any barriers to entry and start to think about ways to overcome them in these new routes. Once you've determined all the possible new routes, you need to really explore them and start to prioritize them, because you're going to layer these onto your baseline plan as you start to build your way to the summit plan. Think about highest impact, think about ease of impact. So some of the internally controlled versus externally controlled initiatives, obviously it's within your control, it's going to be easier to implement. And as you layer these onto your baseline plan, you really need to think about how they affect each gear in the business, because the effect will trickle down from increased customers, going to have an impact on every area. So it's a really nice way of visualizing how you're determining the outcomes of each of these initiatives. Always add a timeline. You never want to do everything on day one. You're really looking to measure these results. And if you do everything at once, you really won't know what's working and what's not. Fuel for the journey. Every single one of the initiatives you build onto your plan is going to require fuel, and you have to plan the consumption very carefully. Obviously, if you can, it's always good to have a spare tank and always assume a journey will take longer than planned. But whatever your fuel position is, you really need to test scenarios here very carefully. Nobody wants to run out of fuel. Course correction. So the one thing that can be said about every financial plan built and every forecast built is that it won't be right. It's a living document, and it's really important to treat it as a living document and something that you go back to regularly. Course correction is basically a test and learn methodology, and as you build and as you start to test these new initiatives, looking back to see how you've done, course correcting, you're effectively building a guidebook to running your business. And every time you do this, you actually learn more and you get better at projecting the next few months, the next year. So it's really a very effective way of getting really good at forecasting. So why aren't there any numbers in this deck? It's because the financial plans should begin with the understanding the mechanics that are behind your business, the key levers. You really get an effective financial forecast when you use multiple points of reference, not just financial ones, to guide you towards your goals. Couple of little asides. Navigation in times of stress. You will get lost, absolutely, time to time. You will question the route you've taken, and other people will question, quite rightly, that route as well. And external elements will always come to play. You can't control everything. But if you do have this solid financial plan that you're working to, you're really reducing the risk in making decisions, and you're allowing yourself to take measured risk with the confidence that means you can look back and see why you made those decisions in the first place. Being able to, if someone questions the route you've taken, be able to go back and say, I made the choice because of this assumption, whether it was right or wrong, as long as you then act upon it, it just gives you the power to make decisions more readily. And being MD of a similar business to some that you run, it really is a minefield of decision making every day. Tips for objectivity. Sometimes you are the person making all of these decisions, and it can be really helpful to ensure you have perspective on the final results. So just some tips from someone who's been FD and MD at the same time. It really helps to just step away from your first draft plan for a couple of days to allow some perspective, because when you go back to it, you will make changes, you'll see gaps, and you'll see things you'll do differently or in different orders. Always worth doing. The other thing I think is really effective, because there's a lot of assumptions in forecasting, is to actually vocalize them. So, talk to someone at work if you can, or, vocalize the assumptions behind your forecast, whether it's someone willing to listen or the pot plant in the corner. It just helps you to justify in your own mind whether you've made a reasonable choice. And of course, if you're struggling to construct the plan and to build the plan and this sort of model, then there is always external expertise that can help you. So a quick summary of the journey today. Identify the gears that drive your business. This is the start point. Every time I go into a new business, this is how I visualize the business before I begin. Baseline now, you need to know where you are, and then determine where you want to be. Define the initiatives that are going to take you there and prioritise them. You start to layer those onto the baseline and think about how they flow through these cogs and these gears. And then always estimate the cash requirement, estimate it again, add some more, and scenario test that the most. Implement them steadily, allow some time for effects, and then measure the results steadily and often so that you can refine the plan, reset the plan, roll back if necessary, or increase what you're doing. And hopefully you'll have some success in your financial planning as part of the business strategy. So thank you very much for listening.